All right, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Mixed Martial Arts. My name is Austin Shaper. This is a show where we cover the topics of UAP, UFC, and World War III. It has been a minute since I've posted. I've been very busy, and I just got a new dog about a week and 2 days ago, a little Papillon, and he is a sweetheart. He's adorable, probably like the most polite, just loving dog that I've ever had. But, he needs training. He needs a lot of attention. So you add that to all the other things that keep you busy in life. And I just haven't gotten around to posting. I apologize for that, but we are back. This is going to be a UAP episode. And this is really going to be me just kind of hashing out some of the controversy, I guess you could call it, in the UFO world right now as to what the hell is going on and what the hell is going to be happening next. We all know about the hearing that took place. I don't even know how long ago it was at this point. What, a week and a half, 2 weeks? I don't know. The time is kind of a blur, but it just recently happened. And now we're kind of in a limbo, right? We're kind of at this point where we don't know what comes next. We're hearing that there may be another hearing coming up in, September, I think. And yeah, just a lot of speculation, a lot of interviews, people such as Jeremy Corbell and all these different people in the UFO community who've been following this topic for years and years and who have largely kind of led the charge for the hearing that just took place are kind of just going on the news and kind of keeping the mainstream updated on what's taking place. And yeah, we're just kind of in a limbo. Don't really know what's coming up next. So I kind of wanted to hop on here today and just kind of hash it out with you guys, kind of see what everybody is thinking online. There's a lot of mixed opinions as to what's coming next. And I suppose we can start here. Arrow, I'm not going to read you guys the letter because, one, I don't have it in front of me. Two, it's kind of long. And three, it was like, week and a half ago. So kind of relatively old news. But I think it's important to address that, what's his name? Dr. Kirk Sean Patrick from, he's the leader of Arrow, essentially the new Project Blue Book organization from the government that is tasked to investigate the UAP phenomenon. Yada, yada, yada. You guys have heard my thoughts if you've heard my videos on how I feel about Arrow as a whole. I think it's a total farce. I think it's a garbage organization that was simply put together so that they could have a place where they could silence whistleblowers and say, oh, come to us, and then never share their story, basically say we have no credible evidence. Just kind of a scapegoat, a place that the American public can feel like, oh, well, we have people investigating it, and if they're not coming out with any credible evidence, then there is no credible evidence. It's a joke, man. But Dr. Kirk Sean Patrick, I can never say his name, came out with this scathing letter a day or two after the hearing, and in summary, he basically said how offended he was about the hearing and that he felt his staff at Arrow was offended and that they are so dedicated to their job and that, what else did he say? So many things. He said that some of the things that were talked about were represented in a false light, I guess you could say, misrepresented by David Grush, but that has been debunked. He tried to say David Grush never worked for Arrow, and right off the bat, David Grush never said he worked for Arrow. And there was a few other things in the letter. Just basically, it was a scathing letter, just kind of shitting on the hearing, saying that they found no credible evidence and they're open to finding it, and they have access to everything they need to have access to, and that David Grush should have come to Arrow if he wanted to share whistleblower concerns. And you guys know, if you listen to David Grush's News Nation interview from a couple months back, he did try to go to specifically, what's his name? Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He's got the most confusing name. I just can never remember it. And he tried to go to him. He has his personal phone number, and he never followed back up with David Grush. So it's fascinating to me that this Arrow is First of all, it was weird because he posted it on his LinkedIn. It was like a personal letter. It wasn't like the Pentagon released this as an official statement. This was literally him being pissed off. And I got no mercy for the dude, truthfully. I think that he's leading an organization that is total garbage. At the very best case, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, he's just not privy to the information. He's not aware that he's being used as this scapegoat. I find that hard to believe. He obviously watched the hearing probably in its entirety. And if that's what he came away with after that hearing, the things that he said in that letter, this dude is either dumb as hell, or, I mean, that would be the best case scenario, or he's 100% compromised and he's in this position of authority to be a placeholder for the government and to continue the misdirection and the propaganda that they want to feed the American people, covering up this UAP phenomenon. It's really those two options, right? He's either compromised or he's ignorant. And it's kind of hard to believe that he'd be ignorant because David Grush is only a phone call away. And if you really wanted to get to the bottom of these things, you wouldn't just be reactively saying, bring us reports, bring us whistleblowers, and we'll talk to them. You would be digging into these stories more than me or the average UFO enthusiast, I guess you could say, would be doing. I mean, we're doing more due diligence on our part as fucking civilians to verify and dig deeper into these stories and get to the bottom of this than Arrow, the organization that's getting millions of dollars a year to do it, and they're coming back with no credible evidence. So whatever, I don't even want to really talk about that too much. I just wanted to address it because that dude's a fucking loser. Arrow fucking sucks, and yes, I hope they get terminated. And if I'm not trying to be a hater, which I don't like to be one, I would just say that it's not his fault. This Kirkpatrick fellow, it's not his fault, and he can't come out and say what he maybe wants to say, and maybe he got into this with genuine intention of, okay, I can actually lead a government program to discover what UAPs are. But I just think that's a stretch too far to give him that much credit. I mean, even when Arrow came out and did that little hearing, was it late last year, and they asked them about some of the biggest cases in the UFO community. And, for example, one of the cases where the UFO allegedly flew over the nuclear missile silos and kind of surveyed them, and they played dumb. Oh, we don't know anything about that. It's just hearsay. It pisses me off, man. It's garbage, and for him to even come out with a response like that just shows how out of touch with the American public these fucking government leaders and politicians are. They're just so out to lunch. It's mind-boggling, but that's all I really care to say about that. You guys can share your thoughts with me in the comments on that. But, it's a garbage company. As far as what comes next in this phenomenon, what's the next step? Because we're kind of in this limbo. We're seeing it on the news still. It is getting some half-hearted coverage, but I don't think it's going to stay around months and months and months. I think largely it's going to be a story, and then it's gone, and then we need to hope that the momentum keeps up with another hearing with the direct whistleblowers. And speaking of, we did hear, I can't remember the source on this, it could have been Jeremy Corbell, I'm not 100% sure, but we did hear recently that a couple of the witnesses, I believe at least two of the witnesses that bailed on the hearing that just took place, they were direct witnesses of the legacy program. They were working inside the program. So what a bummer to find out that they were either scared off by the Pentagon or threatened. We heard that Tim Burchett came out and said that these whistleblowers have been contacted from the Pentagon and, threatened or coerced, whatever it may be, that convinced them to not want to testify. But what a shame, man, because we could have heard from firsthand whistleblowers, and I think that would have been the ingredient that would have made this land, a home run on the first try, whereas now we're kind of in limbo, and we kind of got to see what comes next and hope that the next hearing is a step farther than this hearing was able to go. A lot of the information that was shared in this previous hearing, while it was amazing and you did get a lot of answers by even what was not answered, for example, a lot of the questions were worded in such a way that they knew David Grush would not be able to answer classified material, but by not answering in a way he was answering. So we did get a lot of good testimony, but it just would have been that much better to get a direct whistleblower witness, someone who's been working in the program, who has touched these craft, maybe seen these bodies, whatever it may be. We needed that ingredient. That was the one thing to take that from a 99 to 100%. And, here's to hoping that we're going to get that in the next hearing. I think we probably should. I would imagine so, but I wanted to. I digress with another thought. I was listening to Rogan's Fight Companion podcast. He kind of covers some of the UFC fights, and he covered the Jake Paul fight with Brennan Schaub and Eddie Bravo. And I was at work yesterday listening to it, and they ended up covering the hearings and just the phenomenon as a whole and where it's at. Do they believe it? And it kind of cracks me up because I think it's such a shame because Rogan, you guys probably know he was on the UFO. He was a believer. I don't really like that word, but he was a believer of the phenomenon for a long time, pretty obsessed with it. Eddie Bravo as well. And then as time has gone by, he's kind of dithered back and forth. I find that to be a little strange. I mean, you had Bob Lazar on the podcast. How could you walk away with any doubts after hearing that man's story is kind of beyond me. But I bring it up because they talked about it, and kind of Eddie Bravo thought, Rogan asked Eddie what his thoughts were on this hearing and what's going on with this whole alien thing. And Eddie Bravo basically said, Project Bluebeam, they just want to distract us. And it was just kind of, you hear that all the time, right? It's a distraction. Project Bluebeam, they're faking it, fake aliens, it's drones. And I found that to be, and Rogan kind of agreed, and he said, now that the government's talking about it, I don't believe it, because why would they be coming forward with this? And Eddie's response was that they wouldn't be able to keep a secret this big, I believe is what he said. Those opinions are exhausting to me because I just find them to be so simplistic. But more so than that, I'm not here to really argue that out because those opinions are fair. When we don't know the truth and we're kept in the dark so much as civilians, it's kind of fair and understandable to come away with any conclusion that it's faked, that it's a distraction. That one kind of bothers me the most. It's a distraction one because there's a lot easier distractions to use than saying fucking aliens are around and UFOs. And why would you have David Grush want this guy? What incentive does he have to lead the biggest disinformation campaign of all time to convince the American populace that there's aliens? To distract from what? It's a stupid opinion, but to each their own. We don't know the truth, so you're totally entitled to it. It's just a little annoying to me. But the thing that I found to be a shame is that it's like the UFO community, we've been lied to and kept in the dark for so long. It's like a case of the boy who cried wolf, right? And now that, I don't know if that's a fair analogy, but I'll use it all the same. It's like now that there really is a wolf, now that there really is possibly the government coming forward with some sort of managed disclosure, or at least factions within the government are disputing this potential disclosure. Now that that's finally happening, something that we've all been wanting for decades after decade, and now that we're getting it, a lot of the people who followed this subject so closely are now off Team UFO. Now it's just a distraction. Now it's, they couldn't keep the secret if it was real. Now this is Project Bluebeam, and I want to do an episode solely on Project Bluebeam at some point here in the near future because I do think it's a possibility, and I do think it could accomplish what the supposed goal of something like Bluebeam would be, which is to destroy world religion and kind of form this one world government by uniting us against an enemy from, space or whatever it may be. So the concept does make sense. I just think it's one of the least likely possible scenarios, but it's just a shame, the irony that now that it's finally happening in a way, just because it's not happening in the format that these people who follow the subject envisioned in their mind that it would happen, it's not the way they thought disclosure would happen, or maybe we're not at disclosure yet, but you know what I mean. It's maybe the hearings didn't go the way they thought. Maybe they were expecting Biden with an alien on the White House lawn, whatever it is. It's not going the way they envisioned in their mind. Now they think, okay, it's either fake or the government's just making it up as a distraction And I thought it was a shame to hear that from Rogan and Eddie because, like I said, boy who cried wolf. What a fucking shame, and the irony that we follow the subject for decades, and then when it finally does start to happen, now we don't believe it anymore because we've been lied to and berated by the government for so many decades. And it gives me some. The thought that I come away with is, damn, this nefarious ass government, man, or whoever's heading these programs and keeping this in the dark, man, they are some nefarious people and they are good at their job. And I saw Jeremy Corbell post, an interview he did with, I think it was like an Australian news station. And he's been getting, if you guys have been seeing some of the interviews he's been posting, he's been getting rather offended when the reporter kind of leads the story, the interview with like a joking attitude, or like introduces them with like saying, get your tinfoil hats on, and has the X-Files music on and things like that. And I can understand the frustration on Jeremy's part. I totally can. He dedicates his life to working on this, and then to kind of be introduced as a bit of a clown while you're trying to give like incredibly serious information has got to be frustrating. So I don't begrudge him for that at all, but I do think that like we need to be careful, people who follow this subject, to not put the anger and the annoyance on the wrong people. The media, and for one, I should say I trust the media a 0%, and I trust the government 0%. So one, I can understand people saying don't trust the government, and two, I can understand people being mad at the media in the way that they're sharing these stories about UFOs and kind of treating it as a joke. I understand that, but let's not forget, man, these people, it's not their fault that they're ignorant of the facts or that they don't take it seriously. We have been propagandized and fed lies and disinformation for decades, and that has an effect, man. People aren't immune to that, and while people such as yourself who are interested in listening to this type of content and following these phenomenon more closely than the average person in the public, you got to understand the average person they're not as maybe curious as you and I, or they don't care to investigate, or they're just trapped in normal life, raising a family, working at a job, busy, with everything else that life entails. It's not necessarily their fault. Even the media, who I hate the media as a general rule of thumb, but even I'm not going to sit there and get mad. And I saw Jeremy Corbell put out a couple interviews where he got rather annoyed with the way that they were speaking to him. I understand the frustration, but I think as a whole, we need to remember who to point the finger at. It's the government, and it is the secret programs who have been keeping the secret from the American public for so long. It's not these media people. They don't fucking know, man. We've been watching alien movies for decades, comedies. We've been seeing people belittle this subject for so long. If you don't do the due diligence because you're a naturally curious person to investigate, while you may be ignorant, I don't think you can be blamed or at fault or I don't think we need to blame those people, is my point. And it's interesting because I saw a post. I wish I would have saved it on Twitter. It was a really good post about the fact that this was on UFO Twitter, and it was about the fact of like, why are we trusting these politicians now? Basically, we trust them in no other facet of life. I know I don't. Schumer and Rubio, I don't care who they are. I just don't trust the majority of politicians. That's not to say that all of them are bad. I'm sure there's a few good eggs out there, but just as a general rule of thumb, the people who seek power and are running this whole show are egotistical maniacs. Is typically the job description or the type of person that fits that job description, I should say. It's not a blanket statement. That's not fair to say, but a lot of them. And this girl on Twitter brought up the point that, why are we trusting these guys now? Because these politicians are constantly lying to us about everything. And now that it just so happens to be a subject that we care about, now it's like we put our guard down and now we're listening to them. And we're like, I don't care what the motive is. Tell us the truth. That's kind of how I felt last week. I'm like, I don't care. I feel like you're doing this for political brownie points. You got wind. You found out that they're going to be disclosing this. You want to get ahead of it and get some political brownie points. And I was like, I don't really care. I just want the truth. So whatever your reasoning is or whatever your motive is for politicizing this now, I don't care. We just want answers. But this girl's tweet did make me kind of reconsider, like, whoa, maybe just because it's a subject that we're so intrigued in and we've been so eager to get answers on, we can't forget that the people who are now discussing this in the government are not trustworthy at all. So I still hold out hope that again, as I mentioned, I still hold out hope that the reason why these politicians are kind of hopping on this bandwagon is, one, their egos. They did not like that Congress has been shut out of this. They feel all powerful, and when they find out they're not all powerful and they're farther down on the food chain than they thought, that pisses them off. And now they're trying to make it seem like, oh, we care about what the American public deserve to know, yada yada. And so I'm holding out hope. I totally relate to what that girl was saying, and I do not trust these people whatsoever. But I do think that there is several motives that could kind of line that up, and it would make sense. Like I said, maybe they've got wind that this is going to be breaking anyway, and they're just trying to get ahead of it. So I do think they have their own selfish ambitions, but I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. As much as I dislike politicians as a general rule of thumb, it is possible that they're telling us the truth on this one, even though I don't believe they would be telling us the truth from the goodness of their heart. I think that's extremely naive based on these guys' past history. Diving into one last thing I wanted to cover for you guys. This one, let's see if I can find it. This was another thing on Twitter that I found very interesting. This comes from Gribbly's Day Out on Twitter, and he said this is his running hypothesis at the moment. I'll try to read this quickly. It's a little long. Grush handed over evidence of such an incontrovertible and damning nature that if approached, those implicated would have no recourse but to fess up. The IG ran with it, and thanks to the quality of the evidence, were able to do exactly that. Senior legislatures, on being presented both the damning evidence and the additional corroboration, saw instantly the political implications, what we just talked about, and the strong need to be aggressively on the right side of an impending shit hit the fan situation. I think that's fair. Legislature has already presented the evidence to Pentagon officials and implicated contractors, and as per quality of evidence, they have already sang like canaries and admitted their conspiracy. Perhaps some senior members of Congress have already been shown hardware by now, etc. Congress sat down with the culprits and negotiated the immunity on the provision that they come forward at the appropriate time without making a fuss, that they have already agreed to hand over all materials as per the eminent domain details. Also, that makes 100% sense to me, because that lines up exactly with Chuck Schumer and who else came up with this new bill that just got passed, that is giving eminent domain to any non-earth materials and non-human intelligence, giving domain to that for immunity, from private contractors and defense contractors, handing over what they got to the government. So I think that lines up exactly with the timing of Schumer's bill. He also goes on to say Congress will continue a measured pace for now without any significant revelations until the 2023 NDAA, that's National Defense Authorization Act. That's where the bill is going to be actually officially signed and put into law. Its NDAA has been signed into law by the president, so the end of this year in the winter, I think. And then he says early to mid-2024, a controlled public disclosure will begin, probably starting with a presidential address. That would be amazing. Whilst individuals have their immunity, the DOD, IC, etc., their autonomy and the relationship with private industry will be the sacrificed lamb of the 2024 election, with candidates competing over who will go furthest to bring them to heel. I think that is probably the most fair hypothesis I've heard as of late. I think that's a very fair assessment, and that the politicians are the reason why you're seeing them work in this bipartisan nature. You're seeing them work together is because they know what's coming. That's why Schumer's coming out with such a specifically worded bill, where he's mentioning non-human intelligence dozens of times, where they're talking about eminent domain over any non-earth materials, and that it will be given immunity. These defense contractors and private industry heads will be given immunity in exchange for their cooperation. These things are obviously happening for a reason. It's not just random, and I think that is a very fair hypothesis. They know what's going on. Maybe they've been shown more than we know. and they're just getting ahead of it, and they realize they need to be on the right side of this. I think that makes 100% sense. That kind of lines up with also what happens with the Ukraine war. When you see everybody, Republican and Democrat, agree, you can kind of see that an agenda, whether you think that agenda is right or wrong, is clearly being pushed, and I think that lines up exactly with what's happening here. So very well said, man. Robert Stack responds to everything that man just said and says, or it just isn't true. Okay, I guess that's possible. I'm open to the possibility of anything, but I will have to say it not being true is the least probable outcome, in my opinion, based on everything that's happened thus far. It's possible, least probable. Second least probable is Project Bluebeam. But it is, like I said, we'll do a video and break that down one day here shortly. Last thing I want to talk about is Ross Coulthart on Need to Know podcast. Kind of gave a little... I don't know if you want to call it a prediction, but he kind of briefly mentioned he thinks that Donald Trump could have some sort of part to play in the disclosure process, and kind of insinuated that in the past it seemed like maybe he was going to squeal piggy on this whole thing. I am skeptical of it. And then somebody kind of on Twitter, on UFO Twitter, tied in together that statement that Ross said with the fact that Joe Rogan just had, what's its name, Patrick Bet-Davis. I like the dude a lot, but I can just never remember his confusing ass name. I think that's his name, though. He had him on the podcast recently, and, basically he was trying to convince Rogan to have Trump on the show. And then Rogan was more open to it than he ever had been in the past. I would love to have that episode happen, by the way, and same with Joe Biden. Any presidential candidate, whatever. I'd like to see him on a long format podcast so we can see what these guys are really about when they don't have a prepared statement from the public that lasts 5 minutes that their staff wrote for them. I'd like to see their real thoughts on the whim, like a human being who has to talk in real time. I would like to see that from any candidate or former or current president. So Rogan seemed open to the idea, and a lot of people on Twitter were speculating, oh, okay, that means that Trump's coming on the Rogan podcast to give us disclosure. Oh my God, you guys. Sometimes UFO Twitter and just the UFO community, it's like you guys are so fucking gullible. You believe absolutely anything. The Las Vegas alien, 100% it's real. Based on literally zero evidence, it's real. It just... Come on, guys. You got to be a little more mature about this stuff. We'll have to see. Ross is a very credible journalist, 100%. I do not doubt what that man says, but he also didn't really say to that degree that Trump is going to bring disclosure. He just kind of hypothesized that, and he didn't give much away. Maybe he knows more than he's letting on. It would be amazing if we got disclosure from whoever, former president, current president, whoever. That being said, it would be interesting if Trump came in. I think that would maybe be the president, right? The one who's kind of non-traditional, kind of just didn't start from the political uprising, for example, that our current President Biden did, who spent his entire life in politics. It would kind of make sense that this kind of out of the ordinary former president could be the one to bring us disclosure. It would kind of add up in this crazy story, but I think it's a stretch. And unless Ross is privy to something that we don't know, I think it's a stretch to say. Trump has gone on camera multiple times and said he doesn't believe in aliens. But then to contradict that point, he also did an interview with his son a few years back and said that he knows about Roswell and that some very interesting things happened that he can't talk about. So who fucking knows, man? This whole thing is a mystery. I think best thing we can hope for is just kind of what this guy here on Twitter hypothesized, that it's probably going to be a chill last half of the year. I wouldn't expect too many more big revelations in the UFO world. Could be wrong about that. Hope to be wrong about that. But I think it's fair to say the ship is moving steadily forward. And when this National Disclosure Authorization Act passes and this bill gets signed into law, you now have the whistleblower law and you have this new law that Schumer just created. So, man, these guys aren't coming up with actual bills and laws put into place for no reason. You would be absolutely goofy to think that. Some people do think that, to each their own. But stay tuned, guys, because something's coming. It's not coming fast enough. I would like to get disclosure this year. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think I do think this is being led up to some event, whether it be one grand day where this all happens, or if it's, like we've talked about so many times, a managed disclosure that happens slowly over the course of the time. I think that's probably the safest way to do it if they have some bombshells to drop for us, that of which they almost certainly do. But if these bombshells could potentially change society rapidly, and what's this new word we're hearing, the ontological shock that could happen after disclosure. Maybe it is very important to do this in a managed way over the course of time, even though it is so counterintuitive to what what we want. We want right now to just come on the damn TV and tell us. Like what Bryce Abel says sometimes, just give us, you don't have to give us disclosure, just give us confirmation. I'd be happy with confirmation right now, but as we've talked about 1,000 times, I don't think that's possible, because the second you confirm anything, you've now opened up the floodgates to the biggest conspiracy of all time, and the media and the population as a whole is never going to let go of that bone. It's in between their teeth, and if you confirm anything, whether it be craft or you just confirm that Roswell really did happen, whatever it is, you confirm one iota, the cat's out of the bag and it's not going back in. So interesting times, guys. I do ask if you appreciated this content and you like talking about UAP, UFO world, UFC community. A lot of good stuff been happening there, or World War III geopolitical stuff. If you like any of those topics, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, click like on the video. I would really appreciate that. And if you guys are listening to Apple or Spotify podcast, just follow the podcast and leave a 5-star review. And lastly, if you guys want to be a part of a little growing community that I have here on Discord called Mixed Martial Arts, where we just kind of share news with each other every day, talk, ask questions, ask about each other's opinions, and it's just a fun little community. It's only a few members, but I recommend you guys join that. It should be in the description to this video. It's fun to grow the group and kind of hear people's opinions. Eventually, we're going to be able to do group chats and maybe Zoom calls together and just kind of have fun with that. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I might be doing a World War III episode with my buddy here in the next few days, so I will keep you guys posted on that. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Stay tuned. Hopefully, we're getting news soon. Peace out.